Hi, my name is Christine. Thanks very much for watching my video. So I'm going to be looking down just at my notes on my computer. So the audience for this video is my 8th grade teaching team and administrators. And the goal of this video is to introduce my action research project to them, which I hope will be successful and ultimately change the culture of special ed at my school. So I am taking a course called Deconstructing the IEP, and I was really struck by some information I read about students taking a lead role in their IEP meetings and the positive implications of that. A recurring sad theme for me about students with disabilities is the shame that they carry. Because of shame, at times they will not even use the accommodations that they are legally entitled to, such as a reading pen, a separate location for testing, or extra time on tests. I have several students who bristle when any service provider or teacher requests or suggests a helpful accommodation they could easily use to enhance their work, such as Google Read and Write. Based on the data I read in some articles in Module 3, an antidote to this shame could be students taking ownership of their IEP process, even in incremental forms if necessary. So several concepts were meaningful for me, and I'd like to share them with you and with my colleagues and administrators in the form of an action research project. The title of my action research project is "How can we have more honest and open conversations with students and their families about their learning disabilities in order to create an atmosphere of autonomy and advocacy, creating a culture of normalizing and celebrating special ed students and their education, and thus replacing a culture of shame?" So one really important point is that we need to start including transition planning on our IEPs in middle school, which we currently do not, and I'll explain why. So I was reading a lot of work that has come out of the IRIS Center at Vanderbilt University, and one practitioner talked about a student with an IEP who said that he was interested in working with animals as a career. So in the transition section of his IEP, he had a goal of visiting 6 animal-related work environments, making a list of his likes and dislikes about each environment, and creating some sort of project or artifact about this. This is powerful because it encourages the student to take agency and start to develop his path beyond high school. So I have a lot of concerns about some of my students' abilities to pass the Regents exams and thus graduate from high school. I'm really concerned about how they will make a living when they leave us and whether or not we are giving them the proper tools to succeed beyond the school walls. A really important point is that before a student can take leadership of their IEP meeting, they have to have an understanding of their own disability and how it affects their performance. So there was a really interesting paper written by Hannah Nolan Spohn. She sat down with an IEP student before his meeting. She was getting to know him and said, "How does your disability affect your learning?" And the student said, "What is a disability?" And she explained and then said, "On your IEP, it says that you have autism." And he said, "What is autism?" So I found this really powerful and identified with this because my students do not advocate for themselves. They do not know about their own disabilities. And I really think that it's our fault, the adults. We have never sat down with the student one-on-one and had an honest conversation about their disability. A student cannot feel comfortable about an aspect of themselves they might consider to be negative unless they own it. There is no way for them to own it unless they are well informed and educated about it. A couple of years ago, I had a student who had a stutter, and fortunately for her, her family had done a lot of research and really advocated for her. And she went to camp every year for stutterers, etc. And whenever someone made fun of her, because they did, she was armed with facts, and she would say, you know what, I was born with a stutter. I may always have a stutter. Scientists don't know why people have stutters. I do go to speech therapy. And at the end, the person who was bullying her had no idea what to say because she did not have shame about it. And unfortunately, most of my students come from families that are not empowered in that way, and they don't have the tools and resources to equip the student with this kind of knowledge. So this is our duty at school. So with this empowerment, students can join in setting appropriate goals for themselves for that year, monitor their own achievement, and base decisions upon their performance. A student really should be aware of their own goals, which often they are not. They don't understand what is stated on the IEP. So there is a lot of research that students who lead their IEP meetings are better informed about their own academic status. They become more confident as they advocate for themselves. This leads to increased engagement in the classroom, better academic skills, and thus better employment outcomes. So it seems like this might be something really small, participating in your IEP meeting, but it has really big, lasting implications. So another thing that Hannah Nolan Spohn talked about is students' self-advocacy pulled back the curtain of the taboo of special ed. We as a society do not know how to speak about special ed constructively and matter-of-factly. There are a lot of feelings involved for all parties, but especially for the student. No child wants to be different from the other kids. My final project will address all of these because with very specific annual goals and viewing the IEP as a living, breathing document to be referred to often, the student will focus on their annual goals. The student mastering their annual goals will bring them to the next level. By taking ownership of these goals, the student will be more involved in their own learning and therefore more successful. I plan to evaluate this artifact by having my team members and my administrators take an anonymous survey on SurveyMonkey. Some of the questions I want to ask them are, at what age do you think it is appropriate to include transitional planning in our school's IEPs? What ideas do you have about how we can better communicate information to students and families about a student's disability? Since we are a pre-K through 12th grade school, should we streamline when, how, and with whom these conversations begin taking place? At what point in a child's education should we begin speaking to they and their families about high school and whether or not continuing at our school is in their best interest? Especially, as I mentioned before, if given their disabilities, it is very unlikely that they will be able to pass the Regents exam and therefore get a diploma from high school. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I would appreciate any feedback you have to offer. Thank you.